Hi everybody, I'm Maggie Van Camp. Background, I may not be a man, but I'm a farmer. So I just wanted to make sure we all take our gender bias off our hat for this particular presentation. I'm very honored to be here and that this paper was actually presented here at this event because I'm a journalist. I was a longtime journalist in agriculture, and I started writing about succession planning back in 1991. And so I've been observing, not as a wonderful advisor like yourself, Lachlan, but as an outside person, and yet deeply involved, because I personally have gone through multiple successions. So today we are going to talk a little bit about communication. We're talking. And I just want to be clear that I don't have all the answers. And I'm hoping all of you have the answers. So I'm actually going to ask you questions, and I'm going to do something I've never done in my entire life, and I'm going to quote myself. So I'm kind of excited about that as a journalist. This is the greatest labor and leadership issue agriculture has ever faced. And I'm glad we're full today talking about it, because all of you recognize that. RBC, which is a large bank in Canada, came out with a report in 2023 that estimated 40% of Canadian farmers are going to retire by 2033. That's 110,000 acres that is in question. Now that is a huge, huge significant number. And I started looking, well, how much does that mean in farm families? It's about 75,000 farms, and 2/3 of those families, and 2/3 of those do not have a succession plan. So we are up to our eyeballs. We don't have enough people to do this well, and we need to get at it. And we need some information from all of you and from researchers and from advisors as well. So this is my quote: agriculture is at a demographic crossroad. And all of you can go write about that in your papers if you like. But it's very, very true. We are at this kind of cusp of a point, and we can choose. We can choose to bury our head in the sand, we call it. Bury his head in the sand, basically. And, or we can actually do something about it with some intelligence. And I'm gonna say this with some positivity, because I'm absolutely sick of the scare stories. I'm absolutely hope all of you go away and go, let's talk about the positives. Let's talk about what this can mean for our industry in the future. And I think we can start by looking at the group here and go, on an international scale, what has worked well for policy and government? I looked all over the place trying to find out what actually worked well. And we need a hub to be able to do that. Within this country, we have had every province doing something different over the years. And in fact, the whole efforts have sort of waned around it, just when we're at a demographic crossroad. And the complexity around this is really interesting. And I think this is probably one of the reasons why it's been so difficult. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that in future sessions. But it's interesting, at the same time our farmers are retiring, we're also scaling up in a huge, huge way. Our farms are changing immensely. And used to be that death took care of succession planning. Now, none of you want to hear that, but that's the reality. Historically, death and a will, and all of a sudden, here's the checkbook. That kind of took care of succession planning, probably the same in Australia. Today, the average age of farmers in Canada is 56, and we're living till we're 85, 86 years old. So now we have family farms with multiple generations, grandpa, granddaughter, cousin, uncle. Like, it's become quite more complex just by the people that are on our farms. And our farms are scaled up, and we have multiple enterprises. So this morning you got to hear from Jake Legee, 3 siblings, right? His goal is to eventually have a cousin consortium for the next generation. We have to be much better in how we approach succession planning if we're going to be able to accommodate that. Our farms are also at an interesting situation because gender, at least in this country, maybe in Australia, I'll catch up. But it's become that we have 50% more people who could succeed. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. I'm looking forward to that. What are females going to bring to Canadian agriculture farms? What kind of lands are they going to bring to it? What kind of intelligence is that daughter-in-law going to bring, right? And she's allowed to have a voice heard and contribute. I think it's a very interesting concept. And of course, technology. All of you, I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like we're at a technological crossroads as well. With the sensors, the robots, the AI, we're going to hear more about that. Like, just consider what agriculture is going through and farming is going through right now. What a huge crossroads that is. And finally, the overlaying problem. I got this from Stats Canada from a few years ago, and you can see farmland values up here escalating, and it's gone further up. And farm revenues, the gap is widening. So how do you come to a situation where you can afford to buy mom and dad out? Or how can you be fair or equal? That's making it more complex. So let's talk about solutions. And I actually believe that without good communication, the implications are huge around succession planning. And even if you're not going to stay on the farm, if you're going to sell it, you still need to be able to communicate with your family. Now, has anybody been to a farm auction when they're sold out? Put your hand up. Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? It's a terrible thing. I've seen people crying. I've seen people who had no idea what their mom and dad were going to do with the farm. They needed to communicate that in advance. We got to do better at this. The implications are so important in rural Canada because our farm families are the cores. So we're fighting the core of my little community of what poor people, where Megs lives. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem for rural integrity and the communities that we're involved with. Also, the mental wellness issue is huge. Now, Farm Management Canada did a study a few years ago called Healthy Minds, Healthy Farms. And they identified that transition or succession is the most stressful part of farming today. So if we're going to go through this time frame without an ability to communicate, it's going to be even more stressful. So let's quantify the economic and the social impacts of succession so that we can go to our governments and say, we need help to get this done, and this is why. Please, researchers, do that. Now this is something I came up, so copyright Maggie Van Camp, who is an observer of the industry. Okay, this is what I think we need to do for a starting place. Now you wouldn't try to fix a baler unless you knew how a baler worked, right? So let's get a good idea of what succession looks like. And I feel like this kind of information is going to ease the pain, those initial conversations that you have as an advisor. People sort of have an understanding of what they're about to embark on. And I feel like it's a prism, the bottom is getting prepared. Now FCC has a fantastic program here that helps Canadian farmers sort of get prepared before they start doing succession planning. Super important to save money and to build confidence in the people that are going to go through it. And I also believe that without a way to communicate, the rest is bunk. The rest is bunk. So unless you can figure out a way to communicate as a family and as a business and with your staff about what's going to happen, you actually can't make the decisions that need to be made in the planning stages. So the planning, this is another thing we need to do, is stop putting it all wrapped up into something called a succession plan. Because in reality, it's a lot more. And I'm going through this with my own family, so I get to actually think about that a larger scale. But you know, there's the mirrored retirement plan that we go through. There's an estate plan we go through. And Len and I believe actually that, you know, even within a business plan that you make, you should have a component of succession planning within that business plan. It's got to be tied in. There's housing plans. There's roles and responsibility plans. That's a big one, right? There's like multiple plans that you have to do in this middle phase. And to get any buy-in, they have to be co-created. It can't be dad and an accountant figuring it out, right? The guy on the throne, he needs to have more buy-in from everybody. So these solutions have to be co-created so that you build plans. Well, guess what? For the future. So why should the 75-year-old patriarch make the plan when everybody's impacted? And actually, they're gonna have to pay for that expansion of that farm. So, you know, they need to buy the farm. The very top of this pyramid is ACT. So this is where the shareholders agreement's made, this is where the wills are made, this is where you actually act. And I worked for an accounting firm, and I see Mark here. I worked at BDO for 5 years as their national director of agriculture. And consistently, those accountants got a call from a farmer that said, hey, yeah, I need a succession plan. Yep. Okay, write up that shareholders agreement. And Mark would ask, so did you talk to the successor? Well, they're at school, so they want to come back to the farm. Like, it was just instant jump over that. And as entrepreneurs, we want to do that. And as parents, this is my hardest challenge about succeeding on the farm, is wanting to give the kids the solutions instead of asking them what they think. And I have to catch myself constantly. I'm gonna run out of time. The 3-circle model, any of you guys are worth their medal has used this and used this? 3-circle model? This has been around since 1982, and this explains why there is a communication problem. Basically, because you're crossing over family with ownership, with business. This tells you why this is a problem. What we do need is solutions that actually give us solutions as to why to solve those communications problems. This is my family, actually, my children and I. And the one there with the t-shirt is the one taking over the farm right now, and it is not linear. Trust me, it is not linear. Because almost all succession problems are communications problems. So if any of you are going to do research, and I'd love to hear about your stories and your own practices and what you found. But they often, 99% of the time, when I asked our accountants what was the main problem, was it communication, and they were, yes, that is the problem. And yet we don't really have good ways to help them. And I think we need to put our brains together and get this done for our farmers and for our farm families. I think we should also cross-pollinate information that we get from non-farming businesses into agriculture. And maybe some of you have done that, and that's wonderful, but we need to gather that together and share that kind of information. Is there something the Chinese restaurant down the road did to make sure that there was good succession planning in place? And communication around that. Can we learn from others? And what can we teach non-farming businesses? Personally, I pulled out something out of the Harvard Business Review and modified it for farms. And this is called the 4-room decision-making model for family businesses. And I changed it, I modified it, of course, and for every farm it's going to be a little bit different. But I thought it works because it tells you, you quickly visualize who has a voice and who has a vote for which kind of decisions. You can set up how they're going to communicate directly and who they have to tell about those decisions. It can work really well. And for my own family, we used 4 rooms, these 4 rooms. But for other families, a board of advisors was where the succession planning room was. But it's just been a really effective way to do it. And I feel there's got to be other stuff out there for us. So please go find that. Let me know, let each other know. Let's get it done. Oh, I gotta go fast, and I talk really fast. The secret sauce of succession is about the succession effect. And I hope all of you go away with a little bit of positivity around this. Matt Lobley and Andrew Arrington did the work in an international study of succession plans, and succession actually. And they found that if a farm picked a successor, they were way more profitable. So that's positive news to take back to you. This is gonna work for you. And subsequently, they've been diving in as to why. Why is that? And the latest one was this European survey. And what they found was once they identified the successor, the farmers' attitudes and how they thought about strategies differed. And they came up with new strategies, quite unique ones actually, if you think about it. Technology diversification, cooperation, pest management. Something that the next generation, actually, if you look at those things, they're exceptionally good at. So they had to do some sort of collaborative decision-making around that strategy. So how did they do that? And it doesn't work. Is that what causes it? So interesting questions. And finally, I wanted to, in the last minute, introduce something called slow succession. Now, some of you that have people who have been stuck in the succession wheel for 20 years are rolling your eyes. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that most entrepreneurs think you can do a succession plan in 2 years, under 2 years. And in actual fact, usually takes up to 10. And what are we trying to cram in there as entrepreneurs in 2 years? Because we want to get this over with. What are we missing out? And as we move, this is basically what succession planning is, right? The next generation, you're going from labor to management to ownership. You're moving them through there. It's not linear, as I said. What are they getting out of there? And it's a very, very powerful time if you take your time and are conscious of it and have agreed timelines around it. They learn not only knowledge and skills. What I've discovered is they also build their own support networks. So they build this sort of support network around them. They'll test things out. They'll try things out. They'll fail. And those are the best lessons, especially as a parent. It also gave me time to gain confidence in my son. And I think I'm just using myself personally, but I've seen it. The next generation, our exiting generations need to know the next generation can handle things financially. That's going to prove, and that's what gives trust to the process for the next generation. So we need to study what it is that families are doing. Tell us, gather it, please, please. We need to know, other than writing several million articles about succession planning. So that's my conclusion. This family is a family from Eastern Ontario that are my communication star. I point to them. They had 3 meetings. They had an operating meeting every day in the yard. They just met every day. They have a cash flow meeting every 2 weeks. Len worked with them, I think. And they had a 3rd meeting, which was their family meeting. And they would meet off-site. They actually got, for the daughter-in-laws, they got a babysitter so that they could be completely present. And the McGregors have a very successful farmer business. And every time I look at families that are struggling, I think we need to share more information about what successful family farms are doing in communication. So thank you for your time.